thing that's different from this shutdown than we've seen in any shutdown, the last 14 of them we counted since 1981, is cutting programs and laying off federal workers. So do you support the White House taking that, unprecedented step here?
Well, of course. I mean, what choice do they have if they don't have the money to run the government? What are they supposed to do?
You don't have to cut programs or lay off federal workers. It's literally never happened before in government shutdowns in the last 14 of them.
Well, I don't think that's accurate. I mean, Bill Clinton laid off I think he laid off 600,000 plus government employees during his tenure. And a lot of that was during a shutdown.
Not during the government shutdown, as a result of the government shutdown, though.
Well, I mean, whether you attribute it to the government shutdown specifically, the fact that people aren't getting paid and the force is leaving as a result, I mean, you can play the chicken and egg game and label it any which way you want. But I think reduction in government force has happened during previous shutdowns, whether it was part of a strategy for negotiation or whether it was a byproduct of the shutdown itself. I think either way, one way or other, it doesn't really matter. The point is the government should be open. There's no reason for it to be closed right now. And my hope is a handful of our Democrat colleagues come across the aisle and say, listen, this isn't good for our armed forces. Yes, the troops are going to get paid, but that doesn't solve many of the other funding issues that, as you know, flow from that.
They're also cutting programs, though. One of them is one you've thrown your support behind. It's the Treasury Department's Community Development Financial Institutions Fund. You signed a letter with a bunch of other lawmakers supporting that earlier this year, and you were on the record with that. The president says they're only cutting Democrat programs and Democrat stuff, but is that a Democrat fund that you supported?
Well, like I said at the very beginning, none of us want this to be happening. But the president, as you know, as we just saw in the Middle East, he'll negotiate and he'll use every tool in his toolbox to negotiate. And right now, he doesn't want a government shutdown. He said that from the beginning. But there have to be consequences for bad behavior. This is bad behavior on the part of Chuck Schumer and the Democrats. But let's just call it what it is. They are holding the government hostage because they want to bring back programs that the American public has express their will through the ballot box. This is the direction we want our government to go in. Now they're saying we're not going to allow you to let the government function. So unless you give us $1.5 trillion in money for programs that the American people have largely now said they're no longer interested in supporting, to include health care for non-citizens, illegal immigrants, health care expansion programs for other countries in some cases on an export basis, unless you give us $1.5 trillion for that, we're going to keep the government closed. That's not negotiating good faith.
Okay, but, it's not for people who are here illegally. It's people who have different legal status, people who are seeking asylum, refugees. Right. We've gone through this with the House Speaker. But I ask on the programs part because...
Yeah, but saying non-citizens is accurate, though. Saying non-citizens is accurate.
You said illegal. You said people who are here illegally.
Mm-hmm. Some of those people would be considered here illegal.
But those are different things. I mean, maybe you don't like temporary protected status, but you're an immigrant with legal status.
But how many people? No, we can't just move on. No, you can't just pave over that because a lot of people come under asylum, claim asylum, which are not actually asylum seekers. That system has been abused by fives of millions, tens of millions, potentially people.
But that's a legal process. You can change the law if you don't like it. But my point is they're not.
But if they've abused the process and lied about it, that's illegal. If they've falsely claimed asylum status, been given asylum status during an administration that chose to voluntarily...
Okay, you're getting off the topic. My point is people who are
I think it's very much the topic.
DACA recipients, temporary protected status, refugees, these are the people who qualify for that. But on the projects, the Department of Energy just canceled $1 billion to the Pacific Northwest Hydrogen Hub. Part of that covers your state of Montana, and your governor actually praised it when it was happening, saying it was going to create good-paying Montana jobs and boost American-made energy. They just yanked $1 billion from that. So is that taking away good-paying jobs in Montana?
Of course it is. As I said, we want the government to be open. You should be saying this to Chuck Schumer, who's closing the government down. I'm agreeing we should have the government open right now. This is an unnecessary shutdown.
But that you're acknowledging that what the Trump administration just pulled in funding is hurting your state.
Having troops not being able to fulfill their functions, having law enforcement officers, having air traffic controllers not be able to direct flights into our airports in Montana hurts our state. Not having federal employees showing up to Farm Service Agency offices during cattle shipping season, that hurts our state. Not having Department of Transportation employees overseeing our highways, our bridges, our airways, our road construction efforts. All those things are hurting every state. So this shutdown is not a good thing, and that's why we don't want it to continue. That's why we voted. That's why we've now voted 8 times to reopen the government, and we've not been supported by our friends across the aisle.
Yeah, we pushed Democrats on their stance. We've had many of your colleagues on the show. But on this hub specifically, I mean, that is the Trump administration didn't have to make that decision. They decided to pull that $1 billion from your state. Do you disagree with that?
Well, I think the reality is we wouldn't be here if the government was still open.